Welcome into the New England Hockey Journal's RinkWise podcast. I am Evan Marinofsky. Hope you're all enjoying the fall hockey slate, which never seems to end. There is just so much going on. I hope you guys are having a good October. No Patrick Donnelly today, unfortunately. He is off doing work, and we thank him for that. But joining me today is St. George's boys hockey coach, Allie Skelley. Allie, how are you?
I'm doing great, Evan. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat for a bit today.
Of course, yes. It's a fun time of year. It's right before the prep season starts. It's funny, I was up at that fall prep hockey league on Sunday. We're recording this Monday, August 21st. And I was there Sunday, and I got to see some prep teams basically together. And it was nice. I'm like, oh man, I can't wait for prep to actually kick off. I can't wait for the high school seasons to get going. How much hockey is on your plate before the prep season starts?
Yeah. So I have three young kids of my own. So
There you go.
A 9-year-old and a 6-year-old boy, and then I have a 3-year-old daughter who's not quite into hockey yet, but she will be. So I think this weekend, just with my two boys alone, I coach both their teams, U10 and U8. I found myself in 4 different rinks. Fortunately, one of those rinks was the New England Sports Village in Attleboro, which had some good games going on. I think it was U15 that I was able to see some good matchups. So I kind of got there early, got my kid in the locker room, got him dressed, and then disappeared for a little bit watching some games in the other rinks there because they were playing in the studio rink. My little guy was. So yeah, I mean, there's always down in this area, there's always hockey going on. And I try to get out and see as many, as many kids as possible. But it's definitely busy, but there's no shortage of hockey, as you know.
No, there isn't. It continues and continues, and it's good. And it's interesting because, like, your kids, not your own kids, but St. George's kids, a lot of them play on the little Bruins team together. Obviously, others play elsewhere. Does that help you? So if you want to go see, a couple, kids, you can just, they're right there on one team.
Yeah, it's helpful, and then it's helpful that that Jerry Buckley is a part of that too. So he and I communicate, quite a bit as far as things that I might be looking for, or pairings that I'd like to see, here and there. But yeah, I mean, I think. Like, honestly, I think my guys, I mean, I can only speak for my guys, but they're ready to go. Like, I think they're about done with fall hockey. And I think they're excited about the start of our season and, all the anticipation that goes into that. So I think, and I gotta believe if my guys are like that, then, then most of the prep teams are like that, just, ready to get going here.
Yeah, we're at that point in October, and I feel like the River Rats Jamboree in late August, it's like, oh my God, real hockey's back. This is great. September, it's sort of you're seeing teams for the first time. And then mid-October hits, and you're like, I need the prep season to start, I need the high school season to start. I know I feel that way. I imagine a lot of kids, as you mentioned, feel the same way. You've been involved in coaching for a long time now, and we'll get into some of that in a bit. But with the fall hockey landscape, are there any changes you wish were instituted? There's no governing board, so it's, and obviously every team does their own thing. But are there things you wish you saw more of or less of in the fall?
Yeah, I mean, from a pure hockey perspective, I wish the season, or I wish the kids played a little bit more in the fall, like they have to play in the winter during our, prep season. And what I mean by that is that, the first chunk of our season, once it starts, you kind of have to wash out the fall and the summer hockey from the kids.
Yes.
Like, now it's time to back check. Now it's time to talk a little bit about, what we have to do. What are our defensive zone responsibilities? things like that, where you just don't like, there's not a lot of that in the summer, and then certainly not a lot of that in the fall. So, but that kind of, it is what it is at this point. Kids are, it's a showcase for the most part. Like, kids are trying to showcase their talent and their ability. So I get it. But yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and fall hockey is, it's probably my least favorite part of being a prep school hockey coach, just because there's so many variables, and the transportation issues. I mean, we're fortunate enough where we're in a good location, so it's not, and we have a good solid base of New England kids on our team, so parents are able to help out with that. But I mean, that's one of the biggest questions when a kid comes for a visit, for an admission visit, is, what are your guys doing for fall hockey? It's like, the first or second question that are on prospective families' minds. And, we reevaluate at the end of the year, and try to figure out what's best for our guys and for our families the following year. And the way it's been is our families have really liked the national bound programs. And but do I see us going to a model like like a Berkshire's done, where they play together under a different name, but they're playing a lot of half of their games at their rink? Like, I think that's incredible, because in the prep school world, especially at the boarding schools, you want the kids on campus as much as possible, right, to build that community. And the reality of it is that the hockey players, the way it stands now, I mean, they're not really around on the weekends. They're not around on a Saturday afternoon or a Saturday evening or a Saturday night, and same thing on Sunday. To be able to have that complete boarding school experience, if you will. So I would love to have more stuff just, run out of our rinks. I don't necessarily have to be, I don't have to be involved in it. Because I think if you start the season earlier, and if you have coaches involved, I think that, that's gonna, then you're opening a can of worms that I don't know if you're gonna be able to contain. But being able to have the kids on campus, still be able to get the games, and get the kids on the ice, like that's kind of what you're looking for. So, do we head in that direction at some point? Again, it's something that I'm constantly thinking about, and, taking the temperature from our kids and from our families, because the kids want to be on campus too. Like, they want to be hanging out and doing the weekend activities. But they also want to be doing the hockey. So, they want the best of both worlds, and there's going to be a way to figure that out. And I think there's some good programs out there now, and some good directions. So, but it's never going to be perfect.
By can of worms, you mean like starting the prep season earlier, right? Like, that's,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
assume.
Yeah. And, I just think it's a little bit different with the day schools, but the traditional boarding schools, like, that's, do we get to that point in another 5 years? Maybe, I don't know. Like, are we,
Yeah,
are we
I get
starting
you.
right now? I just don't know. I mean, the way it is now at St. George's, all of our guys, they're all doing hockey specific strength and conditioning in the afternoon. Like, that's their afternoon activity. They work out with our strength coach in our fitness center. And then, they skate 4 evenings a week, in our rinks. And it's all structured. College coaches, NHL player development guys are running that stuff. I can't, again, as you know, I can't be on the ice, but I can be in the rink. I can watch. So it's interesting to see, which direction we're gonna head in here in the next. I think the next couple of years are gonna be really interesting for prep school hockey.
I agree, and I think you see, you look at Cushing, they have their team, the Penguins, and they have, Kimball Union, who plays as the Wildcats, and a lot of teams, New Hampton and Governors, I think, have a team, and I think when you were at Portsmouth Abbey, they had a team in the fall, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, we jumped in that first year. We jumped into the PPP. That first year, that program, Peak Performance Prep.
Yep.
Um, that's
Not the
we
loans, not the PPP loans, the
no,
PPP league.
no, very different. Yeah, very different. Yeah. We jumped into that, and I think they still do that. And that's still an option for us at St. George's moving forward. But again, I would love a scenario where the kids are getting the same amount of ice time, but we're able to do it from our home turf. So and our ice goes in this year. We've had some ice issues with our chiller and things, but our ice is typically in late September.
Mhm.
We have the 2 sheets, so it's right there. And it's also a good way to showcase your facilities and your school as well. So
100%, 100%. I think it's interesting, as that sort of goes along, because you said, like, if teams are coming there to play, they're seeing St. George's, that, and it's a it's a beautiful campus, I mean,
yeah,
it's a gorgeous spot. That's sort of what I wanted to get into is year 1 for you at St. George's. What'd you think? How'd you like it? Obviously
yeah.
successful and on the ice. Like, how did it go for you?
Yeah, it was obviously it was a great year. It was a year, of sort of continued professional growth for me. I work in the admission office, but also the hockey piece is a big part of it, as you know. Working at any boarding school, like people are busy, right? Like we do. I think and this is the case. Some places where guys are just hockey coaches, right? Like
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
just the hockey coach. But at most of our schools, we wear a lot of different hats throughout the course of the day, and the coaching piece is kind of the last thing that you do. Even though it might be, most of the time is the most high profile, but it was a great year. The kids were fantastic. Obviously, we had a very talented team last year. We have a very talented team this year. I was just really impressed by the kids. Quite honestly, and not just their skill, but their competitive makeup. They were just they just kind of have this winning mentality about them, and showed up every day and worked really hard to get better. And I think that showed in our results. So
Do you when you came in, I think they'd been a 500 team the year before, and obviously you stepped in, and it's a good roster. It was a really good roster last year, and I don't know how much, you had a chance to recruit for. I don't think, because you got hired in like March, correct?
yeah, I don't remember the exact timing. It was like it was interesting timing as far as
Yes.
that whole piece for recruiting. Yeah, there was a couple kids that I was interested in, that were high on my list, when I was at Portsmouth Abbey. That it got to an interesting point where I really wasn't I didn't communicate at all with them, because that was just an awkward position to be in. They ended up choosing St. George's. So I had the opportunity to bring in a couple kids, but yeah, I mean, it was a pretty talented roster, to begin with. And like, look, you know, um, when you do well, it's you get all these accolades, right? Like, oh, and it was a 500 team, pretty much the same team, 500, and then you come like, uh, my whole thing was, it had very little to do with me. I wanted to I wanted to um, make the kids feel as though they felt supported and comfortable. And I just want to make sure that they have a good time playing a sport that they're really passionate about. So, and we are constantly, the hard part about it is that for me, I hadn't seen these kids play a lot, right? So
Hmm.
we were the first half of the season, we were constantly tinkering with lines and combinations. And I always want to, make sure that, um, guys are again, comfortable playing with each other, because some guys, to really reach their potential, they can do that with, maybe being paired up with this person or that person, but not with another person. So I'm
Hmm.
always cognizant of that, and what each individual's kid's style of play is, and how they feed off of each other. So that's the tough part, is trying to figure that out. And the kids, I think, I give them credit, they stuck with it, even though they didn't really know, maybe where they were going to be or who they were going to be playing with. And I know that's difficult. But at the end of the day, I think we were able to find the best combinations. And you know, we had great goaltending, we had great defense, and we really had three lines that were interchangeable. And that, as you know, in the prep school world, that's what differentiates, a good team from a great team.
Yeah, and I mean, you got again like Elite Eight came very close to beating KUA at KUA, and it was you guys kind of had it all last year. And when you look at this year's team, in net, I mean, you lose Ryder Shea. Obviously, that's a big loss. He's doing really well in the BCHL right now, I believe.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what do you know what the plan is for in net right now?
Yeah, well, we have a kid, Tyler King, who is coming in from, he's actually a New Hampshire kid, um, which I'm always partial to the New Hampshire kids, having grown up in
Yes.
New Hampshire. But yeah, Tyler King, he's coming to us from um, South Kent. He was there. He's a stop at goal. He's a Bridge Academy stop at kid, just like Ryder, and really, again, obviously talent is a big piece of this, but extremely hard worker, which is important to me, and a really good kid. And he's playing at a high level, so he's gonna be, I think he's gonna be the guy that's gonna get the majority of the minutes this year. Just right now, as we sit here on October 21st.
Yeah, we have a little
But
bit.
yeah, we got a little bit of time, and then we have a kid coming in from Quebec, um, who's a monster. He's a big kid. Uh, Dash George is his name. He's like 6'3", 6'4". He's playing football. He's actually one of the few kids. I have two kids on the varsity roster that play a fall sport, and he's
Wow.
playing football. And so he's going to be a good addition too. So, and then I got a young kid from Philly who's a ninth grader. But I think at this point Tyler's gonna get the majority of the minutes. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Football
listen,
player. That's
yeah,
good.
football,
You don't
yeah,
hear that all
football
the
player.
time with hockey.
No, football player and goalie too. It's like a different kind of mentality, but he's pretty athletic for a kid his size. Yeah, but listen, our D are so, like, the defensive group that these whoever's in net has playing in front of them is it's exceptional. Like, I think our top three guys, or three of our 6D, are, you can make an argument, are three of the best D in prep hockey. And then my other guys are could be one and twos on a lot of rosters.
Mhm.
So it's a really talented group.
Yeah, I mean, you get Everett Baldwin back, you get Sinurcha back, Walsh is back as well. Baldwin was the big one. I think a lot of people were kind of surprised he decided to stay. You look at sort of Holinka camp, and just sort of the way he plays. NHL draft prospect as well for this upcoming year. Huge, obviously, for you guys to have him return. And he's another kid, like in a fall hockey game, you can't miss. He's just
Yeah.
rushing the puck every shift. He's just so noticeable. I'm curious for you, as you've been in prep coaching for a long time. You've seen a lot of NHL draft prospects. And one of the common themes over the last like 2 years has just sort of been the lack of guys being taken from prep. I think prep only had one kid taken last year, Ben Merrill, two the year before with Cohane and Gamond. Baldwin to me is a easy pick. It just comes down to where. How do you think prep is for NHL draft prospects right now?
Yeah, I mean, like obviously kids not a lot of kids are making coming out of prep and being drafted just based on the numbers, the stats that you just spit out. I think, it's such the hockey world is so crazy, and these kids have so many different people in their ears. And the parents have so many people in their ears saying, you got to do this, you got to do that. If you don't do, you're not going to get here, you're not going to get there. I think, I sympathize with these kids, and I sympathize with these families. Like, they don't know what to do.
No,
They,
they don't.
they get to this crossroad and they say, well, this kid, left after his junior year and went to the USHL, or, went to the NAL, or went to the BCHL. And so if that's what he did, then that's what my kid has to do. Or if I'm the player, that's what I have to do. And then you have family advisors, you have, college coaches, whatever schools they're committed to. And then the AAA coaches and family. I mean, there's just so many people that are that want a piece of this here. So the traditional path for these path for these high level kids, the Baldwins of the world are leave prep after your junior year, go to the USHL if you're fortunate enough to be able to do that. And then you end up, going to your college and spending a year or two there, and then, who knows, how have you developed? Then you have the NHL, and when you get drafted, like, that's a whole other, like, then you have those people kind of pulling the strings. So,
Yep.
I mean, listen, for Everett, I'm never going to be a roadblock. I'm never going to, when kids are coming through the admission office at St. George's, and there's the hockey academy piece, that's one route, right? Junior route or prep school route. I never say, like, I'm never going to badmouth a hockey academy. I'm never going to badmouth the junior route. I mean, I tell families, like, look, I'm biased. I'm biased because I'm here right now, right?
Yeah.
This is what I do. And I'll just talk to you about what the prep route can do for your son, and for you guys as a family. And I'll talk about that experience. But for Everett, his family, was getting some good advice. He was certainly being pulled, but they were getting some really solid sound advice. And for Everett, it was in his best interest. And I strongly believe this, and people can say, well, obviously you want him to come back. But for Everett Baldwin, the hockey player, and Everett Baldwin, the person, and the student, and, just the young man that he is, it was in his best interest to come back to St. George's. And I think, he's going to reap, I know he's going to reap the benefits, as he moves forward in the future. Listen, the kids, you've seen him skate. He's a special talent. And he's got everything.
He
He's got
can
everything.
fly.
And he's got the work ethic to go with it. I mean, he's first guy on the ice, last guy off the ice. He'd sleep on the ranks if he could. And he's just a fantastic kid, happy-go-lucky kid, who, he'll be, if he continues to develop this season, he'll get drafted, and some NHL team's going to be really happy with that pick.
Well, so what I think is interesting with his situation is, you see more and more, and some kids it works out. leaving after the junior year from prep, they go to juniors and they do well, but
Right.
a lot also don't. And their path sort of gets derailed a bit. And you see kids leaving prep early, you see kids leaving even academies like Mount or other places early, and it just it doesn't work out the way that they thought it would. And I think, you look at even like a Ryder Shea last year to keep it St. George's centric, like there was a case to be made that he could have went to juniors after his junior year. He was already committed. He was, I think, Cedar Rapids had his rights. Um, at the time. And I think for goalies, juniors is even worse. Like juniors is, and I've done a story on this, is harsh. Like that's just the nature of
Yes.
juniors. It's not saying that juniors is bad. It's just for goalies, it's a hard place to survive in. I remember Brian DeCord saying to me, goal, goal, playing goaltending in juniors is not about thriving. It's just about surviving. Get through it. And I think, there's a little bit of that with players too. And for someone like Everett, like, my guess isn't, again, we haven't seen the season play out yet, but he's going to be really good. He's going to dominate. He's going to be, what we all think he can be and what you think he can be. And I think kids are going to see that and go, wait a second. Like he had a great senior year. He gets to graduate from St. George's. And by the way, I'm not advocating for this. I think it's different for every kid. Every kid has a different
Yeah.
path. And I get that. But I think for kids in prep, you do see kids leaving early. It doesn't always work out. And I think Everett might be a good example of someone who stayed, it worked out, and more kids say, you know what? I'm going to stay too. Why am I immediately jumping when I can go to juniors later on? Why am I kind of having the future come to me when I can just let it happen down the road? And I wonder if that ends up being a case where like he's
Yeah.
sort of an example for kids for 08s, 09s, 10s, and beyond.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like you have to look at each individual case as it is, right?
Mhm.
Each kid and every kid is different. Every kid's game is different. Every kid's makeup is different. Their family situation is different. What they want to get out of this experience is different. And no two kids are alike. And again, my point is like there's different routes you can go and, be appreciative of that. Like, that's great. You have these different opportunities, but really, think about who you are and think about what you want and just because what's the best route for player A isn't always the best route for player B. So if all goes according to plan for Everett, knock on wood, I think it's wonderful for prep hockey to, and the kids that follow to be able to, look and say, here's a kid that, this is what he wanted and his ultimate goal of playing, Hockey East and then professional hockey came to fruition. And this was his route. So I think I think that'll be really good for prep hockey. If you look at Marco, right? Look at Marco's nursery. Like he accelerated.
Mhm.
So he was supposed to be in his junior year. He was a sophomore last year, but he had enough credits because he had done the Mount thing and then gone to New Hampton and then he's now with us for his second year. So he's a senior. He's a senior now, so he'll be graduating. So that was in his best interests, right? Like he again, it's a kid who and whose family valued education, they valued the experience, and they wanted their son to graduate from St. George's and then move on and be able to pursue whatever the next dream or goal is. So you know, again, everybody does it a little bit differently. And I think, I've coached kids where, yeah, like staying here is not the right thing for you. Go do the junior hockey thing. And you're right. Junior hockey, whether you're a goalie or not, it is about survival. Like, and
Cutthroat.
that's, and again, I'm not talking negative about anything here, but like prep hockey is a place where, you know, you have support and people really genuinely care about you and who you are as a kid and also as a player. And then you go to juniors and it's a little bit more like, I'm not saying they don't care about you, but it's a little more cutthroat. And again, you're trying to survive. And then you go back to college, right? Where again, you're supported and, back in sort of a more of a prep school, environment or situation. So it's a step, it's the meat of the sandwich. It's the middle part of the sandwich, that, it's not for everyone,
And
but
you didn't have
yeah.
to do juniors, right? You went
No.
straight from
Oh,
Exeter.
thank God. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't know how that all worked out, but I was just lucky. Yeah, I did. I went right from Exeter. I redshirted my first year at St. Lawrence. So, that was kind of my junior's year, I guess. But, yeah, thank God.
It's funny. I think I told this before. My dad went to St. Lawrence. He didn't play hockey there or anything, but someone said to
Nice.
me recently, like, "Oh, I went to this small school in upstate New York. You ever St. Lawrence?" I was like, "Oh my god, my dad went there." Like, yeah, of course I know St. Lawrence.
You can't go anywhere without meeting somebody or having a person that you meet know somebody or a family member who went to St. Lawrence. It's incredible because you're
Yeah,
right. It's a small school, but like everybody, the networking and the St. Lawrence connection is crazy.
it is. And I used to have a little St. Lawrence practice jersey I'd wear in like
There
hockey
you go.
practices,
Nice.
and of course when I was at UMass, obviously Carve was a
Yeah.
St. Lawrence guy, so that was
Yeah.
great. That was another great St. Lawrence alum. Your own career is fascinating, and sort of your path sense. So for people who don't know, your career ended, or your playing career ended when you were hit from behind in a game. You were a junior defenseman against UNH. You were hit from behind, correct? That
Yeah. Yeah. So it was actually my senior year. But I had another year left because of the red shirt year. But,
okay.
yeah, it was against actually the weekend prior, we had played against UNH at UNH, which was like the highlight for me, being a New Hampshire kid. My whole family went to UNH, including my wife now. She went to UNH, played field hockey there. My sister went to UNH, played field hockey there. My both parents went there. Anyways,
Wow.
yeah, that was
Nowadays, if we were covering your recruitment, would be like, oh, duh for UNH. That's an easy layup for UNH. Allie Skelley to UNH. I mean, obviously.
yeah. So I played my last full game in college hockey against UNH, which is kind of left out of my story a lot. I don't think about it a lot, but when I'm thinking about it, it's kind of cool. So yeah, but it was actually we were playing against Lake Superior State. Yeah, it was a home series against Lake Superior State when I was hit from behind. Um, yeah, and that unfortunately ended my playing days.
In Because you fractured your C5, 6, and 7 vertebrae in your neck, correct? It was those three?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, fractured and dislocated my C5, 6, and 7. Had to have emergency surgery. Those vertebrae were all fused together. They took bone out of my hip and used that to fuse my vertebrae together. So
So I was reading a story from 2007, which is now almost 20 years ago, which is
yeah,
just
that's
insane.
insane.
Um,
Yeah.
I was reading a story there about how it sort of, completely changed your mindset, um, not just in hockey, but in life in general. You wanted to go into coaching. You studied economics. W- how over the years since it happened in 2003, correct?
It was just before. It was December 13th of 2002.
Okay, so it's been just over 20 years since.
Yeah.
How has that shaped your life in the
Yeah.
years since?
I mean, it's played a huge role in who I am today. Yeah, I think it's kind of like now with COVID, like you have pre-COVID, post-COVID, right? And everyone talks about, well, before COVID,
Yep.
this is the way the world worked, and now post-COVID, like we'll be talking about that for as long as we live. But yeah, for me, it's like pre-injury and then post-injury. I mean, I was going in one direction, and then this traumatic injury happens, totally shakes my own personal world, and shoots me off in a different direction. And, at the time for a couple of years, like I was, I struggled, I'll be honest. I struggled. I struggled with, some, fighting some demons, I think. Why me? I was very selfish in the way that I thought about, my injury. But then through my relationship with Travis Roy, who everybody knows, he kind of he whipped me into shape. My relationship with me made me realize how tremendously lucky I was, because, my conversations with him, and as I met other people who, were living their life in a wheelchair, my injury was significant. The three vertebrae, the C5, 6, and 7, usually the higher up the neck you go, the more chance you have of being a quadriplegic. And so, I was meeting these people who had, a lesser injury than myself. And, and here I was like, how am I walking around and able to do everything that I want to do? And here you are. So my involvement with the Travis Roy Foundation, and now with SCI Boston, has completely, changed who I am as a person, and also, how I coach, quite honestly. I mean, it affect, like, one of the first things we do when kids make the team, any team that I coach, so my St. George's guys, I give them the TR 24 helmet sticker,
Mhm.
that the Bruins wore that one year, when they signed Travis to that 1 year deal. Actually, I think it was when he passed. They wore that sticker. So now all my teams, I was able to steal a bunch of those stickers, from Trav, and every kid wears one of those, and we talk about it constantly. I don't talk much about, my particular injury, but I talk a lot about Travis, and I send the kids YouTube links, of Travis speaking and doing some TED Talks and things like that. And because oftentimes we get lost, right? Kids get lost and, oh, I want more playing time, or I want to be on the power play. Um, I want to be on the first line. Have some gratitude, like appreciate where you're at, and appreciate the fact that you're able to go out, tie your skates up, throw the jersey on every day, and go out and compete. Appreciate your family, appreciate your parents, think about everything that has gone into you being able to be where you're at today. Like, that's a big leap for a lot of kids mentally, to be able to kind of sit and reflect. But we do that a lot, and we talk about gratitude a lot. We'll go around, the stretching circle at practice, and we'll say, all right, what are we grateful for today? And each kid will go around and just kind of, rattle off what they're grateful for. But that wasn't me pre-injury.
Yeah.
Like that, it just wasn't, like, that wasn't who I was. But that is me post injury. And I try to, I wish I had more gratitude in my life when I was a teenager. Um, so I want to make sure that, kids have the opportunity to express that, and be appreciative for everything that they do have, and not focus on what they don't have.
And I think it's also for everything you've said, kind of putting that perspective onto them and helping them because as teenagers, as because you've coached them for a while, and from covering them and from being one not too long ago, you don't have a huge perspective. You don't have a huge worldview. It's a pretty it's kind of just your own thing. And I'm curious from your perspective, like, what does it take from a coach to lead a group of especially like young men or of teenagers, and trying to turn them into good young men? Like, what are your keys to that?
Yeah, you gotta role model good behaviors, and you gotta show them that you care. And that can be from the coach's perspective, from the adult perspective, that can be sometimes hard because you're not going to get that. We live in a world of instant gratification, and to show a kid that you care can sometimes that's not a day, that's not a week, it's not a month. Like that's the course of sometimes a season or more, right? Like, and you got to be there for the kid. You got to be willing to have, the hard conversations with the kid. But if they know that you care, that you genuinely care about them, they're gonna, uh, they're going to reach their potential, and in turn, the group of 20 is going to reach their potential, and maybe, even exceed that potential. So I think that's the key is like kids want to know that you care about them. They want to know that you know their name, right? You know where they're from, um, and so much more, and that you're in their corner, and it's not you versus them. Like, I have that conversation all the time, guys. I am here. I don't want to coach in college. I don't want to coach in the NHL. Like, this is where I want to coach. Like, this isn't about me, right? There's no me in this at all. Like, I don't, there's nothing like, you don't walk around campus, kind of puff out your chest being like, well, this is my, coaching record. I don't care about any of that. I care about these kids and making sure that they get out of the experience what they want to get out of the experience and so much more. And, when you have kids that go on and have great hockey careers, that's great. But, what's I've been doing this long enough now where you follow kids and they're great husbands and they're great dads. Like that's cool because where that started. That started in high school. Like that started being part of a team, So, but the caring piece is that's the important piece.
Do you think that's always been the case with, I mean, obviously some coaches differ in different areas, but do you think that's also sort of a generational change
Yeah.
from when you were a kid?
Yeah. I mean, I could go back and, think about a lot of coaches that I had that, at the time, I don't know if I thought that they really cared about me, but, I think now with the roles reversed and me being a coach, I think I look back and, that person did care about me.
Mhm.
How they showed it might have been a little bit different,
Yes.
were they gonna, give me put their hand on my shoulder and, maybe give me a hug if I need it? Probably not. Right. Like, were
Yeah.
they going to make eye contact with me when they spoke to me? Probably not. But, I think that they did, genuinely care. I had one of the best, one of the all time greats in college, Joe Marsh. He was kind of the ultimate players coach, and I learned a lot from him. And in my, I come from a family of coaches. My brother coaches college baseball. My sister coaches college field hockey. My dad was a coach for over 40 years in high school baseball, and some football. So I kind of grew up with that in that kind of world. But yeah, kids have it's an interesting debate. Have kids changed or have the adults changed? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's an interesting it's an interesting debate as far as that goes. But there's certainly, you gotta take more things into consideration when you're talking with kids, these days than maybe you did certainly when I was a player and even when I first started coaching. So
Yeah, I think I mean, I wasn't around for those times, and I mean, I'm only 25 now, but I look at it in the sense of like, I think those kids turned into adults and said, "All right, here's what we liked, here's what we didn't like. Let's acclimate to it. Let's change some different things." I think that to me, that's my view on it. Like, I think that's how that stuff happens. In my generation, when we get into, 30s and 40s and we're coaching teams and stuff, I think it'll kind of be the same thing where it's like, oh, they did this when I was a kid. I didn't really like that style. I like this. I like that. I think that kind of accounts for it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like kids are, and this isn't necessarily kids' fault, but kids these days are certainly more entitled than I remember kids being when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And even maybe more entitled. And I don't mean entitled as a negative, but they just, they expect more, right? More for maybe less. Like they expect to be on the power play, but not have to work harder to get power play minutes. Things like that. And I think a lot of times that can, maybe come from parents' expectations. Listen, parents have, I'm going through it now. I told you I was at 4 different rinks with my 9-year-old and my 6-year-old this weekend. Like it's a commitment. It's a financial commitment. It's a time commitment. And you do that over the course of a long time. Like you expect to reap the benefits. Right?
Yes.
And that's where, that's one of the more difficult things about, being a coach at this level is that, parents can be tough at times.
Yeah. And I think they expect some, and not all, but some can expect, a commitment out of it, the Division I commitment. And I think, one thing I get is I wonder if at some point, and it probably won't change, but where parents look at it and just say, and I think a lot of parents base their wants in this of, I just want my kid to have a good experience wherever they are, whatever team they're on. I think to me, like I'm not a parent, so I can't talk about that. But what I can say is my view of it is I want my kid to have fun and enjoy it and have an enriching experience and to become a good young man or young woman on down the line. Like to me, that's the biggest thing. And I think that does get overlooked. And I don't think that's going to change. I mean, look, when I have kids someday, I'll probably be like, that little Marinofsky is the best on the ice. He should be on the power play. He's better than every kid out there. He should. Yeah. The fact that he doesn't have a commitment to BU at 12 years old is crazy to me. Like maybe I'll be like that, but I do think it does come down to just wanting your kid to enjoy their experience.
Yeah, and for half of my coaching career, just about half, I didn't have kids, and then that's also changed the way that I coach too. I come at it from more of maybe a parental figure than certainly I ever did. So when you get to that point and you have kids and you become a dad or a mom, like that definitely changes things. I think I was exactly like you. I was like, well, I just want my kid to be able to do this and do that. And then even I catch myself.
Yeah.
Like when I'm like, and then, but I do catch myself.
Yes.
And I'm like, you know what? Like, what are the chances your kid, goes and plays, even college hockey, like so slim.
We'll write about them once when they're like 14 and it's going to ruin you. Yep. They're on the road to a D1 commit.
There's like such a big part of me that's like, oh, you guys sure you don't want to like, what about golf? Golf's a great sport. Like let's
always play it.
Yeah, let's go play golf or let's go do this. And, but fortunately or unfortunately, my kids, love hockey. So, here we are.
That's awesome. Well, someday you'll see me in a rink, screaming at my, for my kids to skate and all that stuff. And you'll be like, see, Evan, look at what you turned into. You turned into exactly what you used to preach against. Allie, this has been fascinating. I think you're a really fascinating person, and this has been awesome to catch up. Before we go, though, we do have our great producer, David Yaz, with the classic Overtime.
Overtime.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back to Overtime, where I provide 3 questions for each of our panelists. Evan and Coach Allie are completely unprepared for this, and they are shuddering in their shoes. No, they're not. All right, let's get right to it. First question. Other than the Boston Bruins, who has the best uniforms in hockey? The uniforms that you dig the most. We're going to set aside the Bruins because it's too easy. And Coach, we're going to let you go first on this one.
Oh man, there's some good unis out there. And I still don't. I saw the Utah Hockey Club play the other night against the Bruins, and it's too early to tell on those. But I mean, I'm a original six guy, so I think I'm going to go with the. I am a Bruins fan, by the way. So I do not like this team at all, but the Canadians. I like the Canadians jerseys.
Classic. And also a classic logo to go along with it. And of course, real hockey fan knows it's. Of course, now I'm going to screw it up. I guess I'm not a real hockey fan. It's. There's an H in there for les habitants, right? Isn't that right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, classic uniform. Evan, the Bruins and Canadians are off the board, and it's your turn.
The Canadians is a great one.
Yeah.
I'll pick an original six, and then I'll pick a non-original six. Chicago Blackhawks uniforms are kind of classic. Those are gorgeous. Like, they just look great on TV. They've been that way forever. They're great. I'll do a kind of off the board one. Anaheim's orange Mighty Duck jersey.
Whoa.
I got one actually so my uncle was a rotating team doctor for them. So this is how stupid I was as a high school kid. My high school gift from them was a customized jersey.
Oh,
my name
nice.
on it, which I never wear. Like, it just, I have it, but it's cool. But yeah, I would say that's like those ones rock, like Anaheim. And I think when you're a non-original six team, you sort of get that freedom to do what you want with a jersey. And I think Anaheim has done that for good and for really bad, but that's good.
Excellent answers both. And Evan, yours provides a good segue to the next question. Question number 2 is, what is your most cherished piece of hockey memorabilia? Could be anything. Could be a hockey card, skate, puck, a stick, what have you. And if you don't have one, then tell us what you might like to have. Evan, you can go first on this one. Cherished piece of hockey memorabilia.
It's kind of a boring one, but it's a cool backstory that just a signed Bobby Orr, the flying through the air, to Evan, good luck always, Bobby Orr. The cool part of it was my neighbors in Framingham had a house next to Bobby Orr in Florida, and without me knowing, just said, "Hey, would you sign this for our neighbor? He's like 8 or 9 years old. He loves hockey." And so one day they just walked over with the thing, and I had no idea. It was a great surprise. And I actually have to move it to my room now. It's still my childhood room. But yeah, that was always cool to me.
I don't know why you undersold that. I give that.
A lot of people have it's a common thing to have.
Wow, but personalized
cool.
and signed by number form. So, all right. Well, anyways, good one. Allie, what do you got?
Yeah, I have a signed photo of by Bergeron and Marchand, and it's a photo of both of them. It's like one of those. It's not a plaque, but you guys know what I mean. Like, it's a picture of both of them, and it's after last time they won the Stanley Cup. So that's actually going to be in my my boys' room. So they're gonna take that, and then one more. My mother-in-law, who knows nothing about hockey, she likes hockey, but she's actually from the Netherlands. She was at some sort of fundraiser, and she came home with this Terry O'Reilly jersey, signed Terry O'Reilly jersey, and she's like, "I don't know who this is, but I know that you love hockey, so here you go." So
that's great.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Fantastic. Yeah. My cousin Eric was telling me recently his favorite piece of hockey memorabilia. He has a photo signed of the night when the Bruins went into the stands in Montreal. I think it was in Montreal, and signed by Mike Milbury, who I believe was the guy who took off the fan's shoe and started smacking him with the shoe. That's the funniest piece of memorabilia, probably. Yeah. All right, final.
Yeah, I want the shoe. Can I have that shoe signed by Mike Milbury?
Oh yeah, whatever happened to the shoe? That's right. Last one, and kind of simple, but if you can recount who the best coach you ever had, either by name or just by description, and tell us why that coach was the best coach you ever had, or even if you're familiar with the coach. I mean, we're not going to be too rigid here, but Allie, what are your thoughts on that?
Does that have to be a hockey coach?
No, actually.
Yeah, so I'm going to say my dad. Yeah, I'm going to say my dad. He could not skate, still can't skate to this day. So he was the door opener in a lot of the hockey, in a lot of hockey situations. He could open a door with the best of them, but he coached me in baseball and football, and obviously, him being a coach for 40 plus years in those sports, helped sort of pave the way for me, and for my passion for coaching. So I gotta go with my dad on this one.
It's a great answer, of course. It's also coaching.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, coaching your kid is not necessarily as natural as you might think. It can be challenging. I coached my son, and I never criticized him, but I think my intensity kind of wore on him a little bit. At the end of the day, I think he wanted me to be dad and not coach. It's funny. We coached a youth basketball team, and the three coaches' kids were all the biggest head cases on the court because they were trying to do too much.
Yeah. Sorry. I coach my kids in hockey right now, and my oldest got called up to play in a U12 game. So I wasn't coaching, and I was sitting in the stands, and I was like, I never want to find myself in the stands ever again. Surrounded by parents who would think they know what they're talking about, but don't. I'm like, I'll stay on the bench, or I'll go I'll go sit in the penalty box. Like I told my wife, I'm like, I'm never doing this again. So that's why I coach my kids at this point.
That's awesome. Well, that's why I think a lot of dads just kind of hang around the glass. Like you just stand at the glass away from everybody.
100%.
And like, I don't want to be, because I always, you mentioned an interesting point. Like when I watch a game, the best vantage point obviously is center ice or up in the stands, because down by the glass, hard to see the other end of the ice. But that is why it's because like, I don't want to hear other people talking about kids and stuff, or thinking they know what they're talking about when they don't. So yeah, I get that. That's funny.
Evan, most memorable favorite coach. What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's funny, like, I could pick a high school coach, but I do believe in the fact, like, youth coaches make a huge difference in a kid's life, good or bad. I had a great youth hockey coach for most of my career as a friend's dad. Name was Joe McGinnis, played for Northeastern, scored in the Bean Pot. That was always the big thing. He always scored in the Bean Pot. And he always was the coach every other year. And we always were good, and he taught me a lot about hockey and being a good person. And he was a big one. I also had a coach in high school. He was the defense coach for 1 year. It was my senior year. His name was Luke, and I'm blanking on his last name. And he didn't say much. But there was one, I used to always make excuses whenever, I'd do something wrong. It was my skates hurt, or, oh, it was this, it was that. And one day he pulled me aside and said, Evan, when you realize that it's you making the mistakes, you will fix those mistakes. Like, just be accountable. And what's interesting is it changed everything for me, because from then on, I started to catch myself and be more accountable about whether it was a hockey thing or school thing, whatever it was. I would, oh no, it's my fault. And then you do fix those mistakes. And it was it was one of those sort of like the cloud disappears type
aha moment
advice. Yeah, an aha moment. So those two stand out.
Tremendous answers, both. We thank you for playing overtime. You did very well. And as a parting gift on overtime, I'm going to send you both some Brawl used Mike Milbury shoes. So enjoy those.
I'll look forward to that.
And Evan, back to you, wrap things up.
Well, this has been great. Allie, again, I can't thank you enough for coming on to do this. I'll see you around the rinks, I am sure. But that's this episode of RinkWise. You New England Hockey Journal listeners, I will see you around the ranks.